All right, I am Matthew Leslie from Scripps Institution of Oceanography. I study the diversity of whales and dolphins. Matthew is spelled M-A-T-T-H-E-W. Leslie is L-E-S-L-I-E.
Thank you, Matthew. I'm sitting here with Matthew Leslie, and one of the foremost researchers in the field of dolphins and whales and categorizing these creatures that humans have been fascinated with for as long as there's been humans. So what draws people to dolphins and whales? Why are these such important creatures?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me. I think that it's just the alien nature of these beings that are somewhat like us, and that they breathe air and they have live birth, but they live in this totally different environment. They live in this ocean environment that to us is very dangerous and scary. It's a place where accidents happen and people drown. They live there every day, and they do all of their existence in this strange place. So yes, as you mentioned, we've had a long history of fascination, and that's gone through ups and downs. Initially they were sea monsters, very scary. And then they became food and things that we eat or use their oil, and now we love them. And so that's part of my fascination with them, not only the biology, but the history as well.
And so you're categorizing, measuring them. How many species are there?
Yeah, it depends on who you talk to, but somewhere between 86 and 89 of all whales and dolphins. So it's a relatively small group in the tree of life, but we're still discovering new species. In 2006, there was a new species of whale, full-on, big-sized, 30, 45-foot whale that was just described. So we think there's more diversity, and we think we've under-characterized the diversity of life within whales and dolphins, and so that gives me some job security, and also is incredibly exciting. We're still exploring the diversity within this group.
And why is categorizing, and how does that help to conserve?
Yes, such a great question, and that's what drives me, is conserving these things ultimately. You can't conserve what you don't know. If there's diversity out there that lies undiscovered, it may wink out, it may go extinct without us ever even knowing it. That's one reason. The other reason is that the Endangered Species Act works on a species, and until we formally describe that species, it doesn't have legal protection. So those are two very good reasons. And I think the third one is sort of a public opinion type of thing, that again, we're still exploring these edges of what we know, and I think my goal is not only to describe that, but to get people excited about that too.
How does one do what you do? Do you go out and catch them and then take their blood, or how exactly does it work?
Yeah, so it's a several part process, and actually it oftentimes takes over years or decades. It does start out with actually going to sea. Many of the samples that I work for, unfortunately, were animals that were killed via interactions with fisheries. And luckily we had a biologist on the boat that could then take a skin sample that would be brought back to the lab. Now we use large boats. We go out on research cruises where we do a various multidisciplinary study, but my part of it is sitting on the bow of the ship with some sort of firearm that on the end of that has a little biopsy plug, similar to what you would get if you had a mole at the dermatologist. He would take a biopsy of that to see if there was something wrong. We shoot a dart at the animal that takes a little bit of skin that then we bring back to the lab and extract the DNA. From there, it's fairly standard lab methods where we pipette clear liquid back and forth and ultimately sequence their DNA. And we're building up a lot of genomic resources, so sequencing the entire genome of these right now. So it's an exciting time to be in this field.
Have you found anything surprising? Have you found any things you didn't expect?
Yeah, absolutely. So the group of dolphins that I study is particularly important because they were killed in a tuna fishery 30 years ago in the millions. So it's like 6 million of these animals died in this fishery, and they still haven't recovered. So we're kind of questioning why that is, and we think that it's partly because there's some what we call cryptic diversity. So there's some diversity within these groups that hasn't been categorized, and that particularly makes them more vulnerable to that. So yes, so my work has basically found some genetic support for that cryptic diversity, or these groups within groups, that is important for conservation.
Why would cryptid diversity have any effect on how many of them are being killed or anything?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And it comes down to, think of it as sort of a family group, and if you've got a smaller family group, if something happens to one of your smaller members of your family, it can really disrupt your way of life. If you're sort of in a big group, a large population, and something happens to one or two, it may not be that big of an impact. So what we're worried about is that these smaller groups, if any one animal gets hurt or killed, it can have a really significant impact on their recovery efforts.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Awesome.